The shuttle doors hissed open with a theatricality that felt unnecessary. Then again, everything at the Intergalactic Coalition Academy reeked of grandiosity. The towering obsidian arches, the hover banners curling with strange glyphs, the landing pad made from compressed lunar glass. Jamie stepped out last, the soft thump of his boots drowned beneath the heavy stomps, shuffles, and squelches of 20 other cadets, each from a species older, and, by reputation, meaner than anything Earth had produced. No one looked at him, not yet. But he felt their eyes brushing against him like gusts of hot wind, curious, dismissive, and faintly amused. The welcome officer was some insectoid thing with a carapace that reflected the twin suns like burnished chrome. It barely paused, as it swept a multi-limbed gesture toward the new arrivals. Proceed through decontamination, species-appropriate sanitation, and initial intake. Assigned barracks and schedules will upload directly into your cortex ports or wristbands, depending on neurological compatibility. Humans, please proceed to the side room for analog data. A few of the larger cadets laughed. One, a leathery-skinned brute the size of a family car, snorted so hard a glob of mucus splattered across the floor. Jamie didn't blink. He followed the direction calmly, bag over his shoulder, spine upright. No chip in his wrist, of course. Earth hadn't signed off on neural sync yet. Too many lawsuits back home. Too many ethics boards. Inside the analog room, a medical unit scanned him in total silence, and a small drone affixed a polymer wristband with his ID, barracks number, and schedule. Height, 5'11". Weight, 152 pounds. Bone density, below average. Cardiac rhythm, resting 52 BPM. Stress response, mild elevation. Nothing that screamed threat. After that came the physicals. One by one, the cadets were marched through an open arena where various instructors ran them through drills and biometrics. Jamie waited his turn. The floor shimmered beneath his feet with temperature-adaptive panels, humming faintly as it recalibrated for species comfort levels. A spined Gorak twice his width completed a weight test by bench-pressing what looked like a small escape pod. A lanky blue-furred Fury danced through a motion routine like it was born with a metronome wired to its soul. When Jamie's turn came, the instructors barely glanced up from their tablets. Species, human. Earth-based biped. No known subdermal armor. Begin baseline test. The weight rack was laughable by comparison, starting at a measly 40 kilograms. He completed the sets methodically, no showboating. During the balance trials, however, one of the instructors tilted his head slightly. Jamie stood motionless on a pivoting gyroscope platform, eyes open, arms relaxed. Not even a sway. Core stabilization is impressive. For a human, the instructor muttered. He passed the motion drills easily, if unremarkably. His heart rate spiked only once when another cadet flinched nearby during a test, and Jamie's body, unthinking, slid into a sideways stance with one hand raised and the other poised near his hip. Reflexive guard formation, another instructor noted. Combat trained? Jamie didn't answer. By the time orientation finished and he'd settled into his quarters, a narrow bunk in a communal block with 6 other species, he was tired but alert. He'd taken mental inventory of every exit point, every angle of surveillance, and every cadet who had lingered a little too long when they saw him. Among them, one stood out. Krafthol, the Drex. Massive, even by Drex standards. His skin was a matte slate blue, thick like volcanic stone. Spiked protrusions ran along his spine and shoulders. He wore his cadet armor with unnecessary flair, shoulder plates slightly modified to add width, gloves reinforced with pressure caps. His species were renowned for their aggression, bred in the methane storms of Njahal, where only the strongest were permitted to spawn. Krafthol had already put 2 other cadets in the infirmary the week before Jamie arrived. He was also assigned to Jamie's barracks. The first night passed quietly. Then came the small things. A shoulder bump in the hallway, a misplaced tray that slid off Jamie's table during mess, a disapproving grunt every time Jamie answered a tactical question in class. Krafthol didn't speak to him directly. Not yet. Jamie never responded. Not once. He picked up his fallen tray, rebalanced his stance after the bump, corrected the class's tactical trajectory maps without pausing when Kravtol loomed behind him. He wasn't being noble, he just knew how this worked. Kravtol was waiting, for a crowd, for a stage. Jamie trained late when others slept. Not strength training, he wasn't going to outlift a Drex. He focused on shadow work, tape work, and movement drills. Foot placement, elbow angles, balance under shifting gravity weights. Twice, a passing cadet noticed him moving across the mats like smoke and paused just a little too long. And once, he caught himself taping his knuckles like he used to do before tournaments back home. The scent of the adhesive brought memories of a rusted gym, of screams and applause under bare lights, and of his coach yelling in Thai from the corner. He tore the tape off before anyone saw. Then came the day. No clouds. Just two suns pounding down on the open training yard. Midday drills were wrapping up. Jamie was brushing off sweat with a towel, eyes scanning the sky, pretending not to feel Kravtol's approach. The Drex stepped into his path. Human. Jamie looked up. "Kneel," Kravtol rumbled, "or I'll kill you where you stand." A hush settled over the yard. Dozens of cadets slowed or stopped. Some instructors turned, no one moved to intervene. Discipline test. Unscripted confrontations were allowed under Academy code, as long as a lethal outcome wasn't guaranteed. The idea was to promote resilience, cultural understanding, and real-time adaptability. Mostly, it promoted beatings. Jamie dropped his towel. Kravtol bared his teeth, rows of jagged bone ridges grinding together. "I'll give you one more chance, weakling. Kneel." Jamie didn't speak. He just smiled. Not wide, not cocky. The kind of smile born in back-alley gyms, when the pain stops registering and all that's left is motion and muscle memory. It didn't reach his eyes. The Drex lunged. To the untrained eye, it looked like teleportation. One moment, Kravtol was standing. The next, he was swinging a massive arm at Jamie's head like a wrecking ball. But Jamie had already stepped inside the arc. His left elbow came up diagonally straight into Kravtol's jaw hinge. The Drex's head snapped sideways. Before he could recover, Jamie dropped low, pivoted, and drove a knee up into the alien's exposed underarm joint, a soft target beneath the bone ridges. A crack echoed. Kravtol roared, but Jamie didn't stop. Elbow, knee, clinch, rotate. He moved like he'd trained for this his entire life, because he had. The second forearm cracked audibly as Jamie turned with a flying knee to the tricep ridge, forcing the limb against Kravtol's own mass. The Drex buckled. 20 seconds. That's how long it took. Kravtol lay on the ground, forearms bent at sick angles, chest heaving, groaning in confusion and pain. The yard was silent. Jamie stepped back, breath slow but steady. Sweat dripped from his nose. His right knee throbbed, he'd felt the impact more than he wanted to admit. His knuckles were bruising already. Medics ran in. Instructors jogged over. "Cadet Jamie Cross," one said sharply. "You're detained pending disciplinary review." He didn't argue. He walked off under escort. And behind him, the entire yard watched. None of them spoke. But something had shifted. They didn't see a human anymore. They saw something else. The holding chamber was sterile and quiet, with one wall made of a translucent material that shimmered when someone stood behind it. Jamie sat alone on a bench that was just slightly too tall for humans. His boots didn't touch the floor. His left hand ached dully, and the first two knuckles were beginning to bloom purple beneath the skin. He flexed them carefully. No fracture, but the pain was sharp enough to promise a week of swelling. His right knee felt worse. Not injured, but it had absorbed too much force on that last rotation. He leaned forward and rested his elbows on his thighs. The momentary stillness in his body betrayed the humming storm in his thoughts. He hadn't wanted to fight Kravtol, not because of fear. Fear was something he understood, respected even. But fighting here wasn't the same as fighting in a ring. There was no bell, no corner coach. No crowd that cheered because they knew what it meant to get back up. Here, he was the anomaly, the soft-boned species from a blue planet no one had taken seriously until Earth's diplomats had bullied their way into the coalition with sheer stubborn persistence. Now, Every mistake a human made would ripple for decades in politics, culture, and perception. And Jamie had just dropped one of the most dominant cadets in the entire academy in under half a minute. His reward? An investigation. The shimmer wall flickered. A voice, monotone and filtered, filled the space. Cadet Cross, you are currently under review for Article 19.3, excessive force during internal dispute. Please remain seated. Jamie didn't respond. The wall cleared to reveal a narrow room where 3 officers sat. One was Vortha, a 6-eyed arbiter species known for its neutrality. Another, an amphibious Silren, blinked slowly through a layer of transparent slime. The last, a human, looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Commander Holt, representative of Earth's fledgling presence in the coalition. Play the footage, the Vortha instructed. The fight played out in cold silence on a suspended hollow screen. Jamie watched his own body move like it belonged to someone else. Every elbow, every pivot, every break was catalogued. Sound was stripped away, replaced by bio readouts, Kravtol's stress levels, Jamie's heart rate, projected bone impact estimates. Pause, the Silren said. Frame 237. Note the human's rotation speed. That is premeditated combat, not reflex. He was attacked. Holt cut in. Kravtol issued a death threat. The Drex lunged first. If you're considering force regulation, consider the fact that Jamie deliberately avoided head trauma. He used joint breaks, classic restraint. The Vortha swiveled toward Jamie. You are trained. This is clear. Jamie nodded once. Officially? No, Jamie said. I trained privately, since I was 6. Why no declaration? There's no official field for, spent a decade in a Bangkok basement gym, dodging elbows. Commander Holt's mouth twitched, but he held the line. The Vortha murmured something unintelligible, then turned back toward Jamie. Your restraint is noted. Cadet Kravtol's medical report indicates non-lethal injuries. Fractures of both ulni and 1 radius. Tendon damage. Projected recovery time, 4 to 5 weeks with Drexian regenerative therapy. He will regain full function. Jamie blinked slowly. 4 to 5 weeks. That was faster than he'd expected. For a human, those injuries would mean casts, surgery, and months of rehab. Do you feel remorse? The Silren asked suddenly. Jamie's voice didn't rise. I feel that I didn't want to do it, but I would do it again if someone threatened my life. The panel exchanged a brief look. Cadet Jamie Cross, the Vortha declared, you are cleared of wrongdoing. You may return to training. However, you will be under observation for the next 60 rotations. Further incidents may result in expulsion. Jamie exhaled through his nose. He didn't thank them. It didn't feel like a favor. He left the room without another word. The mood on campus had shifted. Not openly. There were no applause, no direct confrontations. But eyes lingered now. Conversations halted when Jamie entered a room. He caught the subtlest edge of caution in how some cadets gave him space, not fear, not yet, but wariness. Calculations being made. The Drex contingent didn't approach him again. Kravtol hadn't returned from the infirmary, but whispers of his condition spread faster than official reports. Both arms, a fury hissed during mealtime. Clean breaks, he screamed, added a wide-eyed Techeri cadet with vibrating antennae. He didn't scream, Jamie muttered. Not quite loud enough for them to hear. He grunted, like a stuck engine. The first few nights back were the hardest. Jamie's bunkmates said nothing, but the tension was heavier than the room's recycled air. No one sat next to him during lectures. During drills, instructors paused just a little longer when it was his turn. But on day 4, something unexpected happened. A cadet approached him in the mess hall. She was lean, vaguely feline in structure, with pale gold fur and large, alert eyes. A Zakari, if he remembered correctly. Their species valued fluidity and control over brute force, prized in coalition intelligence divisions. She hovered near his table for a moment, bowl in hand. Is this seat taken? Jamie looked up. It's empty. She sat, placing her tray down without comment. For a full 2 minutes, neither said anything. Then, what was that technique? You rotated your hip before each strike, but not for power. Jamie chewed his protein loaf. Not for power. For position. Muay Thai? His eyebrows rose slightly. You've heard of it? The Zakari tilted her head. We study everything. Jamie gave the faintest smile, the real kind this time. Would you teach me? She asked. He didn't answer right away. A dozen eyes were on them from other tables. He felt the pulse of the room shifting, molecules rearranging. Maybe, he said finally. But only if you're okay getting elbowed in the ribs a lot. The Zakari's grin was all sharp teeth. I heal fast. Later that week, Kravtol returned. Both of his arms were wrapped in reinforced exocasts lattices of medical alloy, infused with regeneration accelerants. He walked slower, less sure of himself, but his eyes still burned. Jamie noticed the change instantly. Not just the physical rehabilitation, the way Kravtol scanned the room, now more careful, less certain. He didn't approach Jamie, didn't make eye contact, but he trained harder than ever, alone. And Jamie? He began hosting quiet sessions in the unused auxiliary gym. No official label, just footwork, balance, and pad drills for whoever wanted to learn. Most just watched from the door. A few tried it. One left with a bruised rib, another with a split lip. They kept coming. Commander Holt stopped him once in the corridor. You've caused a bit of a stir, Cross. Jamie shrugged. Wasn't my plan. You're becoming a symbol, whether you want to or not. I'd rather be left alone. Holt smiled faintly. That's not how symbols work. 2 weeks passed. Kravtol never spoke a word. But one evening, as Jamie was wrapping up drills with the Zakari cadet, he noticed the Drex standing in the doorway, just watching. Both arms still in casts, no expression. He left after 5 minutes, said nothing. The next day, Kravtol requested access to the physical therapy chamber on Jamie's schedule. They shared the space in silence. Not friendly, not hostile. Just 2 cadets recovering in their own ways. And when Jamie caught the Drex subtly adjusting his posture to avoid stress on the forearms, aligning his weight on the balls of his feet, he said nothing. Because he knew. The recalculations had begun. Jamie's knee popped faintly as he lowered into a horse stance, arms steady, weight distributed. The gym's grav modulator was set slightly higher than standard, barely noticeable to most cadets, but enough to push Jamie's muscles harder, stretch the frame of every movement. Across from him, Dava the Zakari held the pads at chest height. She wasn't smiling. Training with Jamie had stopped being novel after the first rib bruise. Now it was about the rhythm, the detail, elbow, step, switch. Again, Jamie instructed, voice calm but firm. Thud. The sharp pop of her elbow hitting the pad was followed by a half-step shift in stance, hips snapping into alignment. Too wide, Jamie muttered. Your shoulder opened. Dava hissed in irritation and reset. Your species is obsessed with angles. We don't have exoskeletons. Angles keep us breathing. She nodded like it made sense now. Behind them, more cadets watched. Not a crowd, just a handful, each leaning subtly in from different corners of the gym. A selfie with translucent skin that shimmered with internal light. A burly Grenax, arms crossed but eyes locked. Even a Tachari hovered awkwardly by the door, pretending to check a datapad. Jamie pretended not to notice. They weren't friends. They weren't even students in the traditional sense, but they were learning. Quietly, without fanfare. And for a school that prided itself on order and lineage, the idea of a human cadet casually reshaping combat drills, without being asked, without permission, was already bending more protocol than anyone was comfortable admitting. Still, no one stopped him. The instructors hadn't said a word. The deans hadn't summoned him again. Commander Holt stayed politely distant. Because Kravtol had not only recovered, he had remained silent. And that silence, more than any review board, had granted Jamie something far rarer than permission. Legitimacy. Jamie limped back to the barracks later that night, his right ankle throbbing slightly from an old scar. He'd landed weird on a pivot the day before, and hadn't iced it properly. Classic mistake. Inside, the lights were dimmed to evening mode. The dorm was quiet, only the faint rustling of creatures adjusting to rest cycles. Jamie sat on the edge of his bunk, rolling his ankle gently. Your gate's off, a voice rumbled. Kravtol stood near the wash station, filling a hydration unit with something thick and green. His arms were free of casts now, but the skin still bore marks, heat bruises from regen therapy, faint swelling near the joints. Jamie looked up, not surprised. "It'll heal," he replied. The Drex turned. "You did not use your full strength against me." Jamie blinked. "I used what I had to." "No, you pulled the final knee." "I reviewed the footage." Jamie exhaled slowly, tired more from the week than the conversation. "I didn't want to dislocate your shoulder. The joint was already compromised." Kravtol nodded, strangely thoughtful. "My brother broke his mate's spine in a rage duel. She lived, barely. He was praised." Jamie said nothing. "I thought you were weak," Kravtol admitted. "Soft-bodied, emotionally undisciplined. Your kind laughs too easily, cries too publicly." "We are emotionally undisciplined," Jamie said. "Sometimes that's the only thing that keeps us alive." The Drex tilted his head. "I do not understand." Jamie reached for his med kit, began wrapping his ankle. "You've got armor under your skin, redundant organ systems, biological fallback routines. We've got skin and panic and pain. That's what we learn to move through. Emotion isn't a flaw. It's a warning system." Kravtol stared at him for a long time, eyes unreadable. "I feared death for the first time in a long time, Cross." Jamie looked up, surprised. The Drex continued, voice quieter. "Not because I thought you would kill me, but because I realized I could be broken. Fast. In front of others. And that kind of death is harder to recover from." Jamie tied off the wrap and stood. "You're recovering." "Yes," Kravtol said, a strange note of humility in his voice. "And watching." By week 6, the academy had changed. It wasn't dramatic, no official memos, no announcements, just a slow, crawling shift in how cadets interacted. Humans had always been tagged with curious symbols on the Coalition interface: low resilience, high unpredictability, substandard bone structure. But cadets started reviewing footage, rewatching the fight, asking questions. Not just about Jamie, but about Earth. About Earth's training regimens, about what kind of environments produced fighters like him, about why a species so biologically unimpressive had survived so many wars. Dava wasn't the only one curious anymore. Jamie found himself stopping more often between drills, answering questions about rotational force, ankle alignment, pain thresholds. At first, he gave short answers. Then he realized the questions weren't coming from pity. They were coming from hunger. They wanted to know how he had done it. Because most of them had never seen someone fight from a position of anatomical disadvantage and win clean. It forced a re-evaluation of strength itself. Then came the new simulation trial. A surprise mid-cycle challenge designed to test team tactics under stress. Each barracks group was given 30 minutes of prep, minimal gear, and an unfamiliar terrain map. The instructors weren't subtle about it. It was a chaos scenario. Leadership gaps, communication failures, biological incompatibilities. It was meant to humble. Jamie was assigned Squad 8. Dava was there. So was the Selthi, the Tachari, and 3 others, all from mixed species groups that had trained loosely with Jamie over the last few weeks. Kravtol was assigned to the opposing squad. The simulation began in the jungle quadrant of the training dome. High humidity, artificial wildlife, variable gravity spikes. Squad 8 moved fast, not in perfect cohesion, but with a shared language of glances and hand signals. Jamie didn't try to lead. He directed movement the same way he had in the gym, by offering angles, coverage arcs, counter-push zones. They didn't mimic human tactics, but they adapted them. When Kravtol's squad ambushed from the ridgeline, Jamie's team dropped low and shifted position without needing orders. Dava flanked. The Selthi ran interference using bioluminescence pulses. The Tachari deployed a shielding drone without waiting for permission. The encounter lasted 90 seconds. Squad 8 disabled all opposing cadets without a single casualty. It wasn't a fight. It was a flow. Afterward, during the debrief, the instructors looked unsettled. One finally asked, "Who designed your counter-rotation maneuver?" No one answered at first. Then Jamie spoke, It wasn't designed, it was adapted. The instructor frowned. From what template? Jamie looked at Dava. She nodded. From the way humans fall, he said. We don't brace, we roll, we let the energy redirect. The room went quiet. That night, Kravtol approached Jamie again. Not in the barracks, not in the gym. On the outer deck, where cadets sometimes went to be alone under the twin moons, Kravtol stood beside him, silent for nearly a minute. You've reshaped our tactics. Jamie shrugged. Just suggestions. No, you made us think differently. You made me think differently. Jamie turned, arms crossed. Why are you really here, Kravtol? The Drex shifted his weight, gaze distant. I want to learn, from you, if you will teach me. Jamie stared. There was no sarcasm, no pride. Just a request. He nodded slowly. Start by forgetting everything you think you know about strength. Kravtol rumbled low. That will take time. Good, Jamie said. That's how you know it's worth doing. The following rotation began like most others' drills at dawn, tactical lectures mid-morning, meal cycles that still managed to confuse Jamie's circadian rhythm. But now, something had crystallized in the quiet hours between duties. Cadets had started practicing earlier, staying later. The auxiliary gym, once mostly empty, now cycled 3 full sessions each evening. Jamie didn't run them, he didn't need to anymore. Others did. Even Kravtol, awkward at first with his still recovering arms, had taken over part of the footwork warm-ups, now muttering corrections in a gravelly monotone. Jamie watched it all unfold from the corner one evening, nursing his wrapped ankle and sipping electrolyte soup that tasted vaguely like boiled wires. Dava sat beside him, tail flicking absently. You look like a teacher. Jamie snorted. I look like someone who forgot to stretch before clinch drills. She grinned. That too. Across the mat, 2 cadets from different worlds, a spindly Avrian and a compact Grenax, worked through a knee-elbow combo. Their movements were clumsy, but the timing was right. The rhythm was forming. Jamie shook his head. This was never the plan. Dava tilted her head. You didn't plan to shift the entire Academy's perspective on your species? I planned to keep my head down, get through the cycle, and avoid getting flattened by something with claws. Well, she said, you failed at that. They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of movement and focus filling the space. Then Dava added, more softly, I think about what you said, about how humans fall, and how you turn that into motion. Jamie's smile faded into something smaller, more thoughtful. We've had to. History's been trying to kill us since we stood upright. Dava nodded slowly. We see death as a test. You see it as a teacher. Jamie turned to look at her, and sometimes the lesson sucks. The Academy issued a notice that same week, an inter-cadet exhibition, hosted on the grand dais, normally reserved for formal challenges or senior demonstrations. It was rare for first years to be invited, but this cycle had been unique. Jamie received the invitation late one evening. It wasn't a competition, not officially, just a demonstration of cross-species tactical applications. Joint performance, control, collaboration, the Coalition's favorite buzzwords. He stared at the message on his wristband for several long seconds, unsure if it was a test or a reward, maybe both. He accepted. The day of the exhibition dawned under a sky the color of molten brass. Cadets from across the Academy gathered in tiered seating, instructors, off-world visitors. Even a few high-ranking Coalition officers, whose uniforms gleamed like starlight. Jamie stood in the staging bay with Dava and Kravtol, along with 4 others from their now loosely formed circle. The Academy hadn't labeled them a team, but the barracks had already started calling them Unit Echo. Jamie stretched slowly, breathing through the slight pull in his healing ankle. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold. Cadet Cross, one of the instructors called. You're leading this demonstration. Do you accept? Jamie hesitated. Then he nodded. I do. He wasn't sure when he'd become their leader. He hadn't asked for it. But he was beginning to understand that leadership, like fighting, was mostly about timing, pressure, and the willingness to take a hit so others didn't have to. The platform lights brightened as the team stepped onto the dais. The observers quieted. A commentator began narrating some dry explanation of the drill scenario. simulated extraction under enemy pressure, mixed terrain engagement. Jamie didn't hear it. He only felt the heat of the moment, the electric stillness before a storm. Then, the signal. They moved. It wasn't a dance, but it was close. Dava swept wide, clearing angles. Kravtol anchored the center, taking simulated fire and holding position like a stone column. Jamie led through the middle, cutting lines with precision, using every elbow and knee, not to dominate, but to shape the flow. Redirect, disrupt. Each member of the squad moved like they'd trained together for years, not weeks. When the final obstacle collapsed, and the last hostile blip dimmed from the simulation feed, the platform lights cut. Silence. Then applause. Muted at first, then louder. A kind of applause Jamie hadn't heard before, not polite, not surprised. Respectful. The commentator said something about the value of adaptive tactics and human fluidity. Jamie didn't hear that either. He was looking at Kravtol, who gave a single, respectful nod. And Dava, whose grin spoke more than words. When they stepped off the dais, no one blocked their path, no one looked down. Eyes met theirs, curious, yes, but no longer skeptical. For the first time, Jamie felt less like an anomaly, more like a part of something shaping the future. Weeks passed. The academy cycle continued. Exams, trials, training evolutions. But Jamie noticed the patterns. New cadets watched Echo Unit with sharp eyes. Instructors asked him to run feedback sessions. A coalition ethics officer cornered him after a seminar to ask about Muay Thai's cultural origins. Jamie answered politely, skipping the grittier parts about bloody gyms and childhood trauma. He'd begun sending reports back to Earth's liaison council. Not formal dispatches, just notes. Observations, cultural insights. And in return, they sent him a gift. A small, well-worn pad of hand wraps. Cloth, not synthweave. The kind that frayed with time and held the smell of years. His old wraps. Shipped from his Bangkok gym. Jamie held them for a long moment in his bunk, thumb brushing the edge of the tape where Coach had written "Fuk fungi train the heart." He wrapped his hands again, slowly. The last evening before rotation break, Kravtol joined Jamie on the upper terrace, overlooking the training grounds. "The academy is changing," the Drex said. Jamie nodded. "You think it's for the better?" Kravtol considered. "I think it is becoming less afraid to learn from the unexpected." They stood in silence. Then Kravtol added, with something like humor, "I still think you are fragile." Jamie chuckled. "I am. You broke both my arms. You're lucky I pulled that knee." Kravtol grunted. Jamie looked out at the stars overhead. "You know what I hate? Many things, I suspect. I hate that it took a fight to make them listen." Kravtol nodded. But they did listen. That was true. The academy had listened. Not because of a speech, not because of politics. Because a quiet, skinny boy from Earth didn't kneel when he was told to. Because he smiled. Not to taunt. But because he'd already survived worse. And now, everyone knew. You don't measure strength in size. Or species. You measure it in what you're willing to stand for. Even when your bones bruise. Even when you're outnumbered. Even when your voice shakes. Jamie stayed a while longer, watching the lights blink across the barracks below. Somewhere down there, another cadet was already whispering a new rumor. About the human boy who smiled at death and taught a galaxy how to move.